Good evening, good evening. Facebook, Instagram, and Sonetquity family. Thank you guys for joining me this evening for another episode of Brillianaires Roundtable Conference. I'm Tony. My partner John is running a bit late. He should be in shortly. And we just wanted to get started, 7 o'clock, get you guys on board. Any music that you may hear in the background, we don't own the rights to. But any comments, questions, anything that you care to share, man, hit us in the boxes down below. Okay? As we briefly stated last week, kind of changed our format. And on Brillianaires Roundtable Conference, we are going to be reading and more or less teaching from the Prosperity Bible. Okay? From the Prosperity Bible. And tonight we're going to be reading from chapter 1. That's the different books behind me here. Chapter 1, story 1, the man who thought his way into partnership with Thomas Edison. That's what we're going to be reading tonight. Based on the length of the stories, and then we want to elaborate a little bit. And if there's any input, we want to get that too. If we have any questions or anything that you want to add. So because of that, we may only complete that one story tonight. Okay? But there's so much in store, man. And let me tell you, this is an excellent book. This book is marvelous, man. And you know, some of the stories were written in 1929. So I just want to put you guys on point when I read the story. You know, it's gonna talk in white folk talk back in 1929. It's gonna talk in black folk talk back in 1929. So I'm hoping that, man, don't get offended. Look beyond, you know, what we're reading and what we're saying, and just try to focus and pay attention to the lesson. Okay? That's the important part. So I'm going to get started. We're trying to give my partner a chance to get here. Like I said, he's not far away, so he should be coming up shortly. So I am going to start with the first story, right? The man who thought his way into partnership with Thomas Edison, right? Truly, thoughts are things, and powerful things at that, when they are mixed with definiteness of purpose, persistence, and a burning desire for their translation into riches or other material objects. A little more than 30 years ago, Edwin C. Barnes discovered how true it is that men really do think and grow rich. His discovery did not come about at one sitting. It came little by little, beginning with a burning desire to become a business associate of the great Thomas Edison. One of the chief characteristics of Barnes' desire was that it was definite. He wanted to work with Edison, not for him. Observe carefully the description of how he went about translating his desire into reality, and you will have a better understanding of the 13 principles which led to riches. When this desire impulse of thought first flashed into his mind, he was in no position to act upon it. Two difficulties stood in his way. He did not know Mr. Edison, and he did not have enough money to pay his railroad fare to Orange, New Jersey. Those difficulties were sufficient to have discouraged the majority of men from making any attempt to carry out the desire. But his was no ordinary desire. He was so determined to find a way to carry out his desire that he finally decided to travel by blind baggage rather than be defeated. To the uninitiated, this means that he went to East Orange on a freight train, no baggage. He presented himself at Mr. Edison's laboratory and announced he had come to go into business with the inventor. In speaking of the first meetings between Barnes and Edison, years later Mr. Edison said, "He stood there before me, looking like an ordinary tramp, but there was something in the expression of his face which conveyed the impression that he was determined to get what he had come for." I had learned from years of experience with men that when a man really desires a thing so deeply that he is willing to stake his entire future on a single turn of the wheel in order to get it, he is sure to win. I gave him the opportunity he asked for because I saw he had made up his mind to stand by until he succeeded. Subsequent events proved that no mistake was being made. Just what young Barnes said to Mr. Edison on that occasion was a far less important than that which he thought. Edison himself said so. It could not have been the young man's appearance which got him his start in the Edison office, for that was definitely against him. If the significance of this statement could be conveyed to every person who read it, there would be no need for the remainder of this book. Barnes did not get his partnership with Edison on his first interview. He did get a chance to work in the Edison office at very nominal wage, doing work that was unimportant to Edison, but most important to Barnes, because it gave him an opportunity to display his merchandise where his intended partner could see it. Months went by. Apparently nothing happened to bring the coveted goal which Barnes had set up in his mind as his definite major purpose. But something important was happening in Barnes' mind. He was so constantly intensifying his desire to become the business associate of Edison. Psychologist has correctly said that when one is truly ready for a thing, it puts in its appearance. Barnes was ready for a business association with Edison. Moreover, he was determined to remain ready until he got that which he was seeking. He did not say to himself, "Ah, well, what's the use? I guess I'll change my mind and try for a salesman job." But he did say, "I came here to go into business with Edison, and I'll accomplish this end if it takes the remainder of my life." He meant it. What a different story men would have to tell if only they would adopt a definite purpose and stand by that purpose until it had time to become an all-consuming obsession. Maybe young Barnes did not know it at the time, but his bulldog determination, his persistence in standing back of a single desire, was destined to mow down all opposition and bring him the opportunity he was seeking. Just a second, y'all. He did not say to himself, "Ah, well, what's the use? I guess I'll change my mind and try for a salesman job." Well, I read that. I'm sorry, y'all. When the opportunity came, it appeared in a different form and from a different direction than Barnes had expected. That is one of the tricks of opportunity. It has a slight habit of slipping in by the back door, and often it comes disguised in form of a misfortune or temporary defeat. Perhaps this is why so many fail to recognize opportunity. Mr. Edison had just perfected a new office device, known at that time as the Edison dictating machine, now the Ediphone. His salesmen were not enthusiastic over the machine. They did not believe it could be sold without great effort. Barnes saw his opportunity. It had crawled in quietly, hidden in a queer-looking machine, which interested no one but Barnes and the inventor. Barnes knew he could sell the Edison dictating machine. He suggested this to Edison and promptly got his chance. He did sell the machine. In fact, he sold it so successfully that Edison gave him a contract to distribute and market it all over the nation. Out of that business association grew the slogan, "Made by Edison and installed by Barnes." The business alliance had been in operation for more than 30 years. Out of it, Barnes had made himself rich in money, but he has done something infinitely greater. He has proven that one really may think and grow rich. How much actual cash that original desire of Barnes had been worth to him, I have no way of knowing. Perhaps it has brought him $2 or $3 million, but the amount, whatever it is, becomes insignificant when compared with the greater asset he acquired in the form of definite knowledge that an intangible impulse of thought can be transmitted or transmuted into a physical counterpart by the application of known principles. Barnes literally thought himself into a partnership with the great Edison. He thought himself into a fortune. He had nothing to start with except the capacity to know what he wanted and the determination to stand by that desire until he realized it. He had no money to begin with. He had but little education. He had no influence. He did have initiative, faith, and the will to win. With these intangible forces, he made himself number one man with the greatest inventor who ever lived. Now, let us look at a different situation and study a man who had plenty of tangible evidence of riches, but lost it because he stopped 3 feet short of the goal he was seeking. Okay, we may have an opportunity to go to the next story, but just to my partner's made it, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, sir. Oh, go ahead, bro. Yes, sir.
So, the gist of this story, if you will, Mr. Barnes, what people would say today, Mr. Barnes had lofty desires. All right? Mr. Barnes went to Orange, New Jersey on a whim, on a humbug, if you will. Because, see, failure never entered his mind. He felt that once he got there, right, he would sell himself and he would convince Edison that he wanted to go in business with him. See, he didn't come there to say, "Hey, Mr. Edison, I want a job. Mr. Edison, I need a job." He came there saying, "I want to be a partner of somehow, some way, some kind." I think that many of us, we possess this innate desire, this innate determination, this fire. But what happens oftentimes, we let other people kill those desires and kill those dreams. Okay? It's like you feel something, you sense something, and it's like, I'm that way in many instances, right? And keep in mind what this book is about. It's about the universal law and the universal principles of economics and prosperity. Okay? So, when we read these stories to you, you find a way to interject yourself into this story. And in this particular story, you are Mr. Barnes. All right? Now, it could be a job. You don't necessarily tell that person that, you wouldn't go to IBM and say, "Hey, look, I'm looking to become a partner." And you're not bringing anything tangible to the table other than just your work ethics. So you're going to be realistic. But it's a word association. it's an emotional and a chemical association as well, because it's a vibe. And I know I've embarked on many of things that some of them I didn't know anything about, but I just felt that I can do it. Okay? And I won over that person that was in charge, or that made the decision to either hire someone or go into business with others. Okay? So the lesson there really is, if you feel so strongly about something, don't give up. Don't give up. Stick to it. Stick with it. And if you do it long enough, you will get just what you are seeking. Okay? My partner may want to add something to that, and we're going to go on to the next story.
Yes. I heard you mention about opportunities, right? And opportunities, they come in a disguise sometimes, And if you're just, not seeking it, or, striving to improve or build, or, are you just dissatisfied with your condition, it actually seems like it's opposition, because, opposition is like in a battle. We put it in the scripture, like we say, steel sharpens steel. So an opportunity will come, but if you look at it from the wrong perspective, you would think it's opposition when really it's an opportunity to improve, to do what's right. Because the only thing from the story that Tony was reading, right? The brother, what was his name?
Barnes.
Barnes, right? He went to meet Edison, but he didn't go looking for a job. He went seeking an opportunity to share something that was within him, within himself, right? Not to change something, but to improve and to to employ it and to magnify certain things, to add another component to what was already in existence, right? And so that's how things are magnified from a foundation, because you can always build from a foundation. So when the foundation is laid, or even in laying a foundation, look at it as an opportunity instead of an opposition, because it's like, how my partner was mentioning, if you go and you talk to somebody who don't see that idea, so the reaction would be opposition. But if you have a determined will to be like, no, you just don't see it, don't mean it don't exist, right? So it's like, that's the part of growth and development that's required in anything that's sought out in life. Even from when you look at the youth today, and you see a professional, I'm gonna go with athletics. When you see the youth looking at, let's just say, LeBron James, when they look at LeBron James, they see like an idol, right? But he's just that example of what they can become with that consistency and that determination. Michael Jordan, all of them, anybody, right? It don't have to be a celebrity. It can be a father, it can be a mother, it can be a neighbor, it can be anything that one aspires to be, right? But the principles are still the same.
That's well said. Definitely don't let opportunity become opposition, right? So I hope that resonates. I'm going to go to the second story in chapter 1. And the title of this story is called 3 Feet from Gold, right? One of the most common causes of failure is the habit of quitting when one is overtaken by temporary defeat. Every person is guilty of this mistake at one time or another. An uncle of R.U. Darby was caught by the gold fever in the gold rush days and went west to dig and grow rich. He had never heard that more gold has been mined from the brains of man than had ever been taken from the earth. That's important, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to highlight that. Let me read that again. He had never heard that more gold had been mined from the brains of man than ever been taken from the earth. Okay? We'll elaborate on that. He staked a claim and went to work with pick and shovel. The going was hard, but his lust for gold was definite. After weeks of labor, he was rewarded by the discovery of the shining ore. He needed machinery to bring the ore to the surface. Quietly, he covered up the mine, retraced his footsteps to his home in Williamsburg, Maryland, told his relatives and a few neighbors of the strike. They got together money for the needed machinery and had it shipped. The uncle and Darby went back to work the mines. The first car of ore was mined and shipped to a smelter. The returns proved they had one of the richest mines in Colorado. A few more cars of that ore would clear the debts. Then would come the big killing in profits. Down went the drill. Up went the hopes of Darby and Uncle. Then something happened. The vein of gold ore disappeared. They had come to the end of the rainbow, and the pot of gold was no longer there. They drilled on, desperately trying to pick up the vein again, all to no avail. Finally, they decided to quit. They sold the machinery to a junkman for a few $100s and took the train back home. Some junkmen are dumb, but not this one. He called in a mining engineer to look at the mine and do a little calculating. The engineer advised that the project had failed because the owners were not familiar with the fault lines. His calculations showed that the vein would be found just 3 feet from where the Darbys had stopped drilling. That is exactly where it was found. The junkman took millions of dollars in ore from the mine because he knew enough to seek expert counsel before giving up. Most of the money which went into the machinery was procured through the efforts of R.U. Darby, who was then a very young man. The money came from his relatives and neighbors because of their faith in him. He paid back every dollar of it, although it was years in doing so. Long afterwards, Mr. Darby recouped his loss many times over when he made the discovery that desire can be transmuted into gold. The discovery came after he went into the business of selling life insurance. Remembering that he lost a huge fortune because he stopped 3 feet from gold, Darby profited by the experience in his chosen work by the simple method of saying to himself, I stopped 3 feet from gold, but I will never stop because men say no when I ask them to buy insurance. Darby is one of the small group of fewer than 50 men who sell more than $1 million in life insurance annually. He owes his stickability to the lesson he learned from quitability in the gold mining business. Before success comes any man's life, he is sure to meet with much temporary defeat and perhaps some failure. When defeat overtakes a man, the easiest and most logical thing to do is to quit. That is exactly what the majority of men do. More than 500 of the most successful men this country has ever known told the author their greatest success came just one step beyond point at which defeat had overtaken them. Failure is a trickster with a keen sense of irony and cunning. It takes great delight in tripping one when success is almost within your reach, when success is almost in your grasp. You know, I have an interesting story, but I want to go back to that phrase which we were saying, that more gold is sought from the minds of man as opposed to the minds of the earth. And what that basically means is the knowledge that one has. All right, the philosophy in business and recognizing it, if you will. See, there's no one or two or three ways to do business, good business. There's really only one way. And that's the universal law, if you follow that law. Now, everybody's going to approach it differently. See, because here he was in the mining business, and he failed. But he applied the things that he learned, how to stick to something because I'm so close, and not quit. But that was in a totally different industry. Okay? I'm gonna share a quick story with you that happened just like this, right? Andrew Carnegie's father bought some land in Pennsylvania to drill, right? He bought so many wells, and he was drilling these wells. And he just kept coming up dry. So he held on to these wells for so many months, but he never got a spick of oil. Finally, Andrew Carnegie's father decided, I said Andrew Carnegie, I take that back, I apologize. It wasn't Andrew Carnegie. It was, it was Hershey. Mm-hmm. It was Hershey, the owner of the Hershey candy bar. It was his father. So when the senior Hershey decided to sell his wells, well, he felt like he walked away unscathed because he made a little profit. He made a little profit from selling the wells. So he went back sitting on his front porch drinking his mint julep and talking, telling stories, the whole bit. The person that purchased his wells, they drilled for 1 week. And when they drilled for that 1 week, his main 3 wells were gushers, right? Those wells are in the annals of the history of this country today, but they're not from Mr. Hershey. You know who bought those wells, ladies and gentlemen? John D. Rockefeller. John D. Rockefeller had not struck any oil in any wells that he had, but he bought the wells and purchased the wells from Mr. Hershey. And the rest is history. We have Exxon Oil, Mobil Oil, and what have you, based on that finding. So now, had Mr. Hershey hired an engineer to look at the drilling, to determine the drilling, he would have found that maybe he was less than a week, maybe a month, because he had the wells for months. So he was just a month away from his riches. But I'm going to show you how the Most High works. See, someone in that circle had the determination and the will. So that family still became very, very wealthy and very famous. Although it wasn't the dad, it was the son. Okay? And when they talk about that vein, they was trying to find that vein. It's just like trying to find a vein in your arm. If you're hitting your arm with a needle and you're looking for a vein to draw blood, well, sometimes the veins collapse. And if they do collapse, that they connect to another vein. So all you have to do is just find that other track. And when you find that track, then you can presume upon your mission. That's what the engineer told the new guy, the jump man, that, you know what? He's just 3 feet away from this. There was a fault line. The fault line was a gap, and it was empty. But before that land divided and separated, that vein was one, and it connected. But it picked up on the other side of that fault. You understand? So, if you truly believe in what you do, And if you feel that strongly about it, many others are going to challenge you and say that you're nut. They're going to say that you're crazy. They're going to say that you're wasting your time. They're going to say you lost your mind. But if you truly feel strongly about it, if there are some other things that you can do, pursue those things. Pursue those efforts. All right? Now, don't get me wrong. At some point or another, there have been people who have quit. And nothing happened after they quit. And they moved on to something else that became very, very successful. Because they applied the same strategy that Mr. Darby did. So, don't always be so quick to give up just because you've gotten frustrated and things didn't work out for you as fast as they worked out for anybody else. Just stick with it just a little bit longer.
Right, we put it in the scripture how patience is a virtue. Right? Impatience is a disaster because that's in anything in life. Right? It's like a baby. The parent has to be more patient than the baby. So that's an area of that which is unknown. Striving to achieve something, or striving to do something that you've never done before. It's different if you have experience. You say, "Oh, no, it's gonna happen in 150 steps." But if you've never taken 150 steps before, you know how to count, but you don't know how to count mathematically to fulfill what 150 steps would produce. Right? So, anytime that one would take on a task of doing anything, patience is the number one virtue. You have to be patient. And it's a story of a man who was deaf. He was deaf, he couldn't hear. And he was striving to do things what people who could hear was doing. So this is a metaphor, but it's an empirical observation that one can take on. If you're listening to somebody who have never done what you're striving to do, and they have your ears, doubt is going to set in because it's probably already in. Now it'll settle itself within your own self, and now you become doubtful. You become impatient. You become whatever it is that's not required to achieve that task or that goal. So people who were listening to the opposition or the critics, they stopped. As my brother said, they stopped 3 feet from the goal. The goal, G-O-L-D, or G-O-A-L. They stopped 3 feet from that goal. It's similar to playing football or any sport. Man break out the hole, he dash up the sideline in the middle of the field or wherever he's going. And he can hear, so he hearing people say, stop, the whistle blew. They thought they heard something to make him stop. But the one who was deaf, he didn't stop. He kept going. And when he achieved that goal, people start, they start clapping for him or supporting him. And they ask other people, what you stop for? They say, well, we heard somebody say stop. You couldn't do it. The whistle blew. Whatever it was that caused them to stop. But nothing caused them to stop but their lack of will. See? Are they tuning in to the critics? Are they being defeated by the opposition? Not that one who couldn't hear. The moral to the story is don't listen to the critics. Don't listen to them. Listen to your innate desire. Listen to what's right. Tony just mentioned how when you see people quit, I wouldn't say they quit, they just go to something else. So they put that same energy into something else. Because if you look at, it's a story about Bill Gates and Microsoft, and Steve Ballmer. He had a total different, he was striving to do something else initially. But he had some tech skills and savvy that was needed to make Microsoft explode into what it is today, business-wise. So Bill Gates and the other, Paul Allen, they teamed up. See, when you have a team that's telling you, we ain't quitting. See, can you imagine what goes on in a huddle on a team? I'm going to take the Kansas City Chiefs, for example. They were being defeated last year in the Super Bowl by the 49ers. They have a quarterback that they believe in. They have a team spirit that they produce from believing in one another. So they went out and achieved the goal. That principle is just not confined to sports. We're reading the Prosperity Bible, and we have some names attached to it, but the principle is universal. So with our Brillianaires Roundtable Conference podcast, our principles are universal. You have some, I'm not going to deviate, but I'm going to highlight something. Some races of people, or some nationalities, they know that it's a responsibility for them to give back to their youth. They know it. It goes without saying. See, because it's not saying it's not in black people. It's just the fact that we are so fragmented. See? We don't want to lift each other up. It's like we don't want to hold the baby up. Now, we don't want to, spoil nobody, but we want to support one another. So when you look at Bill Gates, Paul Allen, Steve Ballmer, Thomas Edison, Barnes, all these brothers, they incorporated that which is unseen to make what's seen now real. Same thing we, not suggesting, because that'll weaken the same thing we imploring one another to do. Same thing. Because the idea is real. We got to magnify the idea. Magnify. Don't magnify doubt, lack of belief, weakness. Magnify what's real. Strength, because weakness and strength cannot exist at the same time. Doubt and confidence cannot exist at the same time. Light and darkness cannot exist at the same time. So we want to magnify that which is real to produce what's becoming real. See, that's what we're here to magnify.
Okay, the next story, number 3, a 50-cent lesson in persistence. Shortly after Mr. Darby received his degree from the University of Hard Knocks and had decided to profit by his experience in the gold mining business, he had the good fortune to be present on an occasion that proved to him that no does not necessarily mean no.
Come on now.
One afternoon, he was helping his uncle grind wheat in an old-fashioned mill. The uncle operated a large farm on which a number of colored sharecropper I got thrown off there. They said the uncle operated a large farm on which a number of colored sharecrop farmers lived. Quietly, the door was opened, and a small colored child, the daughter of a tenant, walked in and took her place near the door. The uncle looked up, saw the child, and barked at her roughly. "What do you want?" Meekly, the child replied, "My mammy said send her 50 cents. "I'll not do that," the uncle retorted. "Now you run on home." "Yassa," the child replied, but she did not move. The uncle went ahead with his work, so busily engaged that he did not pay enough attention to the child to observe that she did not leave. When he looked up and saw her still standing there, he yelled at her, "I told you to go on home. Now go, or I'll take a switch to you. The little girl said, "Yassa," but she did not budge an inch. The uncle dropped the sack of grain he was about to pour into the mill hopper, picked up a barrel stave, and started towards the child with an expression on his face that indicated trouble. Darby held his breath. He was certain he was about to witness a murder. He knew his uncle had a fierce temper. He knew that colored child was not supposed to defy white people in this part of the country. When the uncle reached the spot where the child was standing, she quickly stepped forward one step, looked up into his eyes, and screamed at the top of her shrill voice, "My mammy's gotta have that 50 cents. The uncle stopped, looked at her for a minute, then slowly laid the barrel stave on the floor, put his hand in his pocket, took out $50 and gave it to her. The child took the money and slowly backed towards the door, never taking his eyes off the man whom she had just conquered. After she had gone, the uncle sat down on a box and looked out the window into space for more than 10 minutes. He was pondering with awe over the whipping he had just taken. Mr. Darby, too, was doing some thinking. That was the first time in all his experience that he had seen a colored child deliberately master an adult white person. How did she do it? What happened to his uncle that caused him to lose his fierceness and becomes as docile as a lamb? What strange power did this child use that made her master over her superior? These and other similar questions flashed into Darby's mind, but he did not find the answer until years later when he told me the story. Strangely, the story of this unusual experience was told to the author in the old mill, on the very spot where the uncle took his whipping. Strangely, too, I had devoted nearly a quarter of a century to the study of the power which enabled an ignorant, illiterate, colored child to conquer an intelligent man. Keep in mind, this is a story that was written in 1929. And as I stated to you earlier, don't be discouraged or don't be turned off by the stories and by the language. See, keep in mind, there's gold in these stories, right? And it comes from the mind of men. And in this case, a little girl. The answer to this question will be found in the principles described in this book. The answer is full and complete. It contains details and instructions sufficient to enable anyone to understand and apply the same force which the little girl accidentally stumbled upon. Keep your mind alert, and you will observe exactly what strange power came to the rescue of the child. You will catch a glimpse of this power in the next chapter. Somewhere in the book, you will find an idea that will quicken your receptive powers and place at your command for your own benefit this same irresistible power. The awareness of this power may come to you in the first chapter, or it may flash into your mind in some subsequent chapter. It may come in the form of a single idea, or it may come in the nature of a plan or a purpose. Again, it may cause you to go back into your past experiences of failure or defeat and bring to the surface some lesson by which you can regain all that you lost through defeat. After I had described to Mr. Darby the power unwittingly used by the little colored child, he quickly retraced his 30 years of experience as a life insurance salesman and frankly acknowledged that his success in that field was due in no small degree to the lesson he had learned from this child. Mr. Darby pointed out, every time a prospect tried to bow me out without buying, I saw that child standing there in the old mill, her big eyes glaring in defiance, and I said to myself, I've got to make this sale. The better portion of all sales I have made were made after people had told me no. Mr. Darby pointed out that every time a prospect tried to bow him out without buying, I saw that child. I'm repeating. He recalled, too, his mistake in having stopped only 3 feet from goal. But He said that experience was a blessing in disguise. It taught me to keep on keeping on, no matter how hard the going may be. A lesson I needed to learn before I could succeed in anything. This story of Mr. Darby and his uncle, the colored child in the gold mine, doubtless will be read by hundreds of men and make their living by selling life insurance. And to all of these, the author wishes to offer the suggestion that Darby owes to these two experiences his ability to sell more than $1 million of life insurance every year. Life is strange and often imponderable. Both the success and the failures have their roots in simple experiences. Mr. Darby's experiences were commonplace and simple enough, yet they held the answer to his destiny in life. Therefore, they were as important to him as life itself. He profited by these two dramatic experiences because he analyzed them and he found the lesson that they taught. But what of the man who had neither the time nor the inclination to study failure and such of knowledge that may lead to success? Where and how is he to learn the art of converting defeat into stepping stones to opportunity? In answer to these questions, this book was written. The answer called for a description of 13 principles, but remember, as you read, the answer you may be seeking to the questions which have caused you to ponder over the strangeness of life may be found in your own mind through some idea, plan, or purpose which may spring into your mind as you read. One sound idea is all that one needs to achieve success. The principles described in this book contains the best and the most practical of all that is known concerning ways and means of creating useful ideas. Before we go any further in our approach to the description of these principles, we believe you are entitled to receive this important suggestion. When riches begin to come, they come so quickly in such great abundance that one wonders where they have been hiding during all these lean years. This is an astounding statement, and all the more so when we take into consideration the popular belief that riches come only to those who work hard and long. When you begin to think and grow rich, you will observe that riches begin with state of mind, with definiteness of purpose, with little or no hard work. You and every person ought to be interested in knowing how to acquire the state of mind which will attract riches. I spent 25 years in research analyzing more than 25,000 people because I too wanted to know how wealthy men become that way. Without that research, this book could not have been written. Here, take notice of a very significant truth. The business depression started in 1929 and continued on to an all-time record of destruction until sometime after President Roosevelt entered office. Then the depression began to fade into nothingness. Just as an electrician in a theater raises the lights so gradually that darkness is transmuted into light before you realize it, so did the spell of fear in the minds of the people gradually faded away and become faith. Observe very closely. As soon as you master the principles of this philosophy and begin to follow instructions for applying those principles, your financial status will begin to improve, and everything you touch will begin to transmute itself into an asset for your benefit. Impossible? Not at all. One of the main weaknesses of mankind is the average man's familiarity with the word impossible. He knows all the rules which will not work. He knows all the things which cannot be done. This book was written for those who seek the rules which have made others successful and are willing to stake everything on those rules. A great many years ago, I purchased a fine dictionary. The first thing I did with it was to turn to the word impossible and neatly clipped it out of the book. That would not be an unwise thing for you to do. Success comes to those who become success conscious. Failure comes to those who indifferently allow themselves to become failure conscious. The object of this book is to help all who seek it to learn the art of changing their minds from failure consciousness to success consciousness. Another weakness found in altogether too many people is the habit of measuring everything and everyone by their own impressions and beliefs. Some who will read this book will believe that no one can think and grow rich. They cannot think in terms of riches because their thought habits have been steeped in poverty, want, misery, failure, and defeat. These unfortunate people remind me of a prominent Chinese who came to America to be educated in American ways. He attended the University of Chicago. One day, President Harper met this young Oriental on the campus, stopped to chat with him for a few minutes, and asked what had impressed him as being the most noticeable characteristic of the American people. "Why," the Chinaman exclaimed, "the queer slant of your eyes. Your eyes are off slant. What do we say about the Chinese? We refuse to believe that which we do not understand. We foolishly believe that our own limitations are the proper measures of limitations. Sure, the other fellow's eyes are off slant because they are not the same as ours." Millions of people look at the achievements of Henry Ford after he has arrived and envied him because of his good fortune or luck or genius or whatever it is that they credit for Ford's fortune. Perhaps one person in every 100,000 knows the secret of Ford's success, and those who do know are too modest or too reluctant to speak of it because of its simplicity. A single transaction will illustrate the secret perfectly. A few years back, Ford decided to produce his now famous V8 motor. He chose to build an engine with the entire 8 cylinders cast in one block, and instructed his engineers to produce a design for the engine. The design was placed on paper, but the engineers agreed to a man that it was simply impossible to cast an 8-cylinder gas block engine in one piece. Ford said, "Produce it anyway." But they replied, "It's impossible." "Go ahead," Ford commanded, and stay on the job until you succeed, no matter how much time it required. The engineers went ahead. There was nothing else for them to do if they were to remain on the Ford staff. 6 months went by, nothing happened. Another 6 months passed and still nothing happened. The engineers tried every conceivable plan to carry out the orders, but the thing seemed out of the question, impossible. At the end of the year, Ford checked with his engineers, and again they informed that they had found no way to carry out his orders. "Go right ahead," said Ford. "I want it, and I'll have it." They went ahead, and then, as if by a stroke of magic, the secret was discovered. The Ford determination had won once more. This story may not be described with minute accuracy, but the sum and substance of it is correct. Deduce from it, you who wish to think and grow rich, the secret of the Ford millions. If you can, you'll not have to look very far. Henry Ford is a success because he understands and applies the principles of success. One of these is desire, knowing what he wants. Remember this Ford's story as you read and pick out the lines in which the secret of his stupendous achievement have been described. If you can do this, if you can lay your finger on the particular group of principles which made Ford rich, you can equal his achievements in almost any calling for which you are suited. You know, I'm going to let you go ahead and take this one first.
Well, I mean, those are principles that's not owned by no one. The only people who own the principles that we're discussing are those who use them. See? Because, who can make you doubt yourself other than yourself? Listen to somebody else who's doubtful. Where there's determination, there's success. Whatever success it is, because the principle is still the same. Starting from nothing, doing the right thing gets the right results. Crawling, eventually you'll run. It's a principle, growth and development. Building some small, starting with some small, building some big. Hey, it's in nature. Look at the seed. Believing in yourself, having a solid foundation also implies a solid team. Look at the results. You win or you succeed. So, it's like starting from, we mentioned a couple weeks ago how when we give back, it creates a circle. And the circle, have you ever seen circles that's intertwined with one another? It's like a change. And that's what giving back does. It changes things and it makes a change. A CHAIN and a CHANGE. Right? So this is what our whole foundation and discussion is about, making a change. Making a change, meaning link to make a change. Right? Because if, many people, they celebrate celebrities and and that's fine. But ask them what they did. Ask them what they did. They'll tell you they did some opposite of what, they did some opposite of doubt. They did some opposite of lack of belief. They did some opposite of weakness. See? So opportunity appears as opposition. It's like if someone, let's just say I say I want to lose weight. I want to lose weight. First, I want to observe what made me gain all the weight. Now that I know that, now I want to do something opposite of that. Can't do the same thing expecting something different. It just don't work like that. I don't care what your name is. I don't care where you're from. It don't matter. It's a universal principle, right? So, but it all starts with thinking. If the thinking don't change, what's going to change? Nothing, okay? So, as we illustrate these principles, even with what we're sharing, right? When you look at the names, and if you can go have a one-on-one with these individuals, they'll tell you, man, it's rough. Coming from zero, it's rough. See? But don't ask me, ask that butterfly. It's rough, meaning it's transformation, meaning coming out of a weak state into a strong state. It's rough, but you got the will to do it. You can do it. Trust me, you can do it. So the right thing never gives you the wrong results. Doing right never gives you the wrong results. It just don't work like that. It's like doing multiplication and one time, it's gonna always be one. I don't care what, because it's a formula. It's a principle. So that's what we talk about, that's what we're saying.
I'm gonna sum it up with one sentence. If you can conceive it, you can achieve it. That's what it boils down to. Ford knew what he wanted, and he conceived it in his mind. And he believed in it enough to get these engineers to believe in it as well. See, they couldn't believe it because they said it was impossible. So they couldn't conceive it. But after working on it so long, they figured it out. And that's where the magic happened. All right. For sake of time, we got one more story. And the last one is titled, "You Are the Master of Your Fate, the Captain of Your Soul." Because when Henley wrote the prophetic line, "I am the master of my faith, I am the captain of my soul," he should have informed us that we are the masters of our fate, the captains of our souls, because we have the power to control our thoughts. He should have told us that the ether in which this little earth floats, in which we move and have our being, is a form of energy moving at an inconceivably high rate of vibration, and that the ether is filled with a form of universal power, which adapts itself to the nature of the thoughts we hold in our minds, and influences us in natural ways to transmute our thoughts into their physical equivalent. If the poet had told us of this great truth, we would know why it is that we are the masters of our fate, the captains of our soul. He should have told us with great emphasis that this power makes no attempt to discriminate between destructive thoughts and constructive thoughts, that it will urge us to translate into physical reality thoughts of poverty just as quickly as it will influence us to act upon thoughts of riches. He should have told us, too, that our brains become magnetized with the dominating thoughts which we hold in our minds, and by means with which no man is familiar, these magnets attract to us the forces, the people, the circumstances of life, which harmonize with the nature of our dominating thoughts. He should have told us that before we can accumulate riches in great abundance, we must magnetize our minds with intense desire for riches, that we must become money conscious until the desire for money drives us to create definite plans for acquiring it. But being a poet and not a philosopher, Henley contented himself by stating a great truth in poetic form, leaving those who followed him to interpret the philosophical meaning of his lines. Little by little, the truth has unfolded itself until it now appears certain that the principles described in this book holds the secret of mastery over our economic fate. We are now ready to examine the first of these principles. Maintain a spirit of open-mindedness, and remember as you read, they are the invention of no one man. The principles were gathered from the life experiences of more than 500 men who actually accumulated riches in huge amounts, men who began in poverty with but little education, without influence. The principles worked for these men. You can put them to work for your own enduring benefit. You will find it easy, not hard to do. Before you read the next chapter, I want you to know that it conveys factual information which might easily change your entire financial destiny, as it has so definitely brought changes of stupendous proportions to two people described. I want you to know also that the relationship between these two men and myself is such that I could have taken no liberties with the facts, even if I had wished to do so. One of them has been my closest personal friend for almost 25 years. The other is my own son. The usual success of these two men, success which they generously accredit to the principle described in the next chapter, more than justifies this personal reference as means of emphasizing the far-flung power of this principle. Almost 15 years ago, I delivered the commencement address at Salem College, Salem, West Virginia. I emphasized the principle described in the next chapter with so much intensity that one of the members of the graduating class definitely appropriated it and made it a part of his own philosophy. The young man is now a member of Congress and an important factor in the present administration. Just before this book was to be published, he wrote me a letter in which he so clearly stated his opinion of the principle outlined in the next chapter that I have chosen to publish his letter as an introduction to that chapter. It gives you an idea of the rewards to come. My dear Napoleon, as I read the letter, my service as a member of Congress has given me an insight into the problems of men and women. I am writing to offer a suggestion which may become helpful to thousands of worthy people. With apologies, I must state that the suggestions, if acted upon, will mean several years of labor and responsibility for you, but I am enheartened to make the suggestion because I know your great love for rendering useful service. In 1922, you delivered the commencement address at Salem College when I was a member of the graduating class. In that address, you planted in my mind an idea which had been responsible for the opportunity to now have to serve the people of my state, and will be responsible in a very large measure for whatever success I may have in the future. The suggestion I have in mind is that you put into a book the sum and substance of the address you delivered at Salem, and in that way give the people of America an opportunity to profit by your many years of experience and association with the men by their greatness have made America the richest nation on earth. I recall as though it was yesterday the marvelous description you gave of the method by which Henry Ford, with but little schooling, without a dollar, with no influential friends, rose to great heights. I made up my mind then, even before you had finished your speech, that I would make a place for myself no matter how many difficulties I had to surmount. Thousands of young people will finish their schooling this year, and within the next few years, every one of them will be seeking just such a message of practical encouragement as the one I received from you. They will want to know where to turn, what to do to get started in life. You can tell them because you have helped to solve the problems of so many people. If there is any possible way that you can afford to render so great a service, may I offer the suggestion that you include with every book one of your personal analysis charts, in order that the purchaser of the book may have the benefit of a complete self-inventory, indicating, as you indicated to me years ago, exactly what is standing in the way of my success. Such a service as this, providing the readers of your book with a complete, unbiased picture, their faults, their virtues, would mean to them the difference between success and failure. The service would be priceless. Millions of people are facing the problem of staging a comeback because of the depression, and I speak from personal experience when I say, I know these earnest people will become and welcome the opportunity to tell you their problems and to receive your suggestions for those solutions. You know the problems of those who face the necessity of beginning all over again. There are thousands of people in America today who would like to know how they can convert ideas into money. People who must start at scratch without finances and recoup their losses. If anyone can help them, you can. If you publish the book, I would like to own the first copy that comes from the press, personally autographed by you. With best wishes, believe me, cordially yours, Jennings Randolph. This is a very interesting to close. Here's a guy that was at school, and this was the commencement speaker giving the graduating speech. And it resonated with this student so much so that he was enamored with his story. And that story made a difference in his life as he went on to Congress. And he felt that he could not have gotten that far, not have gone that far, had he not heard that speech. So sometimes, that saying that goes, a broke clock is right 2 times a day. You can get good advice from a fool, right? Because he's going to tell you what not to do. And if you look at that as an example, then you're already on the right path to your destination. That's what I get from this story. I'm done on that one.
Yes, sir. When you have a determination, and when you have an open mind, and when you have a dissatisfaction, you're gonna make way. You're gonna segue It's an old adage that says quitters never win. And that's true. If you quit, you can't win. But if you keep going, you'll have little small victories en route to that goal. You know, you might hear me mention sports a lot, but it's not about the sports. It's about the principle in sports. Because I play sports. I still play. I mean, I don't play like I used to, but the principles, they resonate more with me now because I'm more mature. As long as you making motion, you know, you're making excitement, or in the stands we call it excitement, right? But you're making motion, you know. And until that motion stops or the goal is achieved, every step is a victory. That's why, you know, years ago, Webster's didn't even have the word can't in it. It didn't even have it in that dictionary. Because that was a word that was prohibited to be used by certain nationalities of people. Now it's just, you know, it's like it's a common thing now to say what you can't do. And since the mind is so fragile and it's so diluted and mixed and tampered with, to where when you get a pure mind, a pure heart, it's strange in this world. So everybody talk about God. God don't have no limits. Limits are self-imposed. So where did they come from? Somebody told you what you can't do. It's like, you know, certain stories that resonate. I mean, it was a bird settling among some chickens, you know. And the bird in his mind was looking at birds flying. And told the chickens in a verbiage, man, I wish I could do that. The chicken said, you can, just flap your wings, man. You know, meaning you have to try to do something. And trying gives you the ability to retain and attain confidence. Everybody want to be strong. Everybody got that potential to be strong. But it's the process to get to that strength is what's difficult. See? We want things instant. It don't work like that. To have a child, it takes at least, was it 6 months? In its fullness is 9 months, but at least 6 months. Or we want to become, in the money world, we want to be millionaires, but stuck in a position that is difficult to achieve that when you've been stuck somewhere. Now it's just imagination. Now it's just a hopeful thought, a wishful thinking. Now it has to be active thinking. Where there's no action, there's no motion. So, all the names that we mentioned, that my partner read, let you be one of them. Let you be one to say, if we're truly dissatisfied, it's the only way change gonna come. Whoever said change would be easy. I remember, being away, and I was like, damn. But I never thought I was away because I was always thinking. I knew physically I was, but my mind was never there. It was always somewhere else. Now, when my mind had to be there with my body, it was for things that had to be resolved right there. So stretch your mind. Open your mind. Use your creativity. You have it. So use it. Or team up, or join on, or link on with somebody, a group, or groups of people who have a like mind, and make something happen. If you want to. The choice is yours. See, the choice is ours now. We can't blame slave master. We can't blame the educational system. We can't blame nobody. We can't blame nothing today. If it's going to be any blame or shame, you got to put it on yourself. Because no one is stopping you. You got a free will. For most people, we use our free will to do some foolishness. It cost me and my partner. But it's paid for. That debt, what they said, what's the saying that they said, we paid our debt to society. Something like that, it's something that, that they try to correlate it to when a person go away and they pay their dues. That's what it was. See, it's paid for. Now, let's have a positive impact on our future. But no one can do it alone. No one. If you think you can, say go ahead. But you can't. Not saying can't from an impossible aspect, but it took two to make one. See? It's going to always take two to make one. Because one has to be timed by something for it to magnify or expand. Just basic mathematics. So again, we thank you all for tuning in, because we have something that's constructed positively. We do.
Thank you guys for joining us tonight. Another episode of Back to the World presents Brillianaires Roundtable Conference. And be sure to join in tomorrow for Back to the World, 10 o'clock. And join us next Wednesday for another episode of Brillianaires Roundtable Conference. Peace.
Peace.